Welcome everybody, wherever it is you are, whether you are in this country or beyond. My name is Hilary Adli and I'm the Director for Teacher and Leadership Development at UCL. It's a real pleasure to be here to celebrate the launch of Teach Like Your Heart's on Fire, which is a very special book. This is a book that is for anyone in education, whether you are in the audience and you are a teacher, you are an aspiring teacher, a leader at any level, but even teachers that are considering returning to the profession. This is a book, definitely, that will ignite your heart and your mind. Now, there are three reasons why I was delighted to be asked to host this launch. The first one is that the author, Christian Mba, I've been privileged to be a very small part of his story, knowing Christian very early in his career, having even taught other members of his family in a school in southwest London. I, many years ago, too many years ago, observed Christian speaking really passionately to a group of NQTs. And he was inspiring and captivating those new teachers right at the beginning of their career. And what he did then was deliver an inspirational keynote with bounce and with energy and with passion. And therefore, when I heard about the book, I thought, yes, I'm certain that the book will be written with the same sort of energy and bounce. The second reason is, as an educator, someone that has 37 years of experience, both in schools, through my own education consultancy company, and now at UCL Institute of Education. As a teacher, I was able to impact hundreds of children every year through my work in schools. And now in my role at UCL, I'm so proud and privileged to have the opportunity to impact tens of thousands of teachers and school leaders, and obviously the young people and the children that they serve. We do that through the teams at the Centre for Educational Leadership, but also some remarkable partners that we have. Some may well be here tonight, and we work with across this country, but actually globally. I think any book that really champions the profession of teaching deserves my support, even if I didn't know the author. And when I read this book, it's full of anecdotes, practical strategies to spark something in us. And it reminds us that whatever children or young people's starting point in life is, great teachers can shape their lives, and great leaders can create those organisational cultures that support teachers to thrive and stay in what is arguably the best profession in the world. The third reason is that at UCL IOE, we're based at UCL Centre for Educational Leadership. The IOE has been #1 in the world for education for 13 consecutive years. Our work aligns with Christian's mission to bridge theory and leadership practice. My work is predominantly based on having strategic oversight over all of UCL's work as a lead provider. So we lead the early career teacher programs, all the full suite of national professional qualifications, and we're moving into the excellence in reception teaching program, etc. So whilst it's such a privilege to lead this work for UCL, to support the DfE's recruitment and retention strategy, we have supported 70,000 teachers and school leaders through our distinctive program since 2021, and we are really proud of that. But Christian's messages in his book really echo ours as an organisation. So there were a few things that resonated, many things that resonated with me in the book, and there were a couple of things that I'll mention now before I introduce Christian and the timetable for the launch. And the first is that Christian talks in the book about the need to recruit the right teachers, but for the right reasons. And that's something that really resonated with me with the work that we do on sort of teacher development. But also, when you read the book, any book that mentions John Lennon, Gary Lineker, the Karate Kid, and Woolworths Pick and Mix, all in kind of, not in the same sentence, perhaps in different chapters, but that's a good read, right? I'm kind of whetting your appetite for more here. But the other thing is that the work that we do as a lead provider, but the work is greater than that across the centre. We know that great teachers can become great leaders, and what we do at the centre and through our work as a lead provider is really feed into that work, provide fantastic professional learning opportunities for teachers and school leaders across the world. Now, in the next hour, I'm going to be shortly introducing Mary Myatt, who's going to give a short keynote on moral purpose and how important it is to lead with values. We're going to open up a panel conversation, quite an organic one, with Akeem, Miriam, Nadine, and Rebecca, where we're going to focus on some of those themes in the book around character and culture, capacity, and drawing on some of the things that Mary mentions about moral purpose. And then you'll have the opportunity to direct some questions towards Christian in particular, that you'll be able to pop into the chat function. The more difficult, the better, I'm sure, but something around, his experience. We're hoping that our panel will be able to really draw on some of the anecdotes and the experiences that they have within their schools as well. So yes, before I introduce Mary, let me introduce the man of the moment, who is Christian Umba. Christian, over to you.
Hilary, you are far, far too kind. I am so chuffed that you are here with me doing this, because we worked together many years ago, and even then you were an inspirational leader, and it doesn't surprise me that you've gone on to do the work that you're doing in helping other teachers be great teachers. And so thank you for your time today. Thank you to all of the guests that are going to be here today. It's exciting for me because we're officially a month since the book has actually been out, and I've had some really good feedback. And the thing I guess I'm most excited about is hearing people engage with the ideas that are in the book. So I'm really keen to hear Mary speak and to have my wonderful panel of guests engage with some of the concepts that are in the book, and definitely for me to have an opportunity to kind of hear some feedback from people in the audience. So yeah, I'm excited. So thank you for hosting today, Hilary.
It's my pleasure, and you speak even now with the bounce and the energy that I remember so well. So yeah, we'll look forward to hearing from you a little bit more. So for now, I'd like to introduce you to Mary Myatt, who is going to be providing us with a keynote addressing moral purpose and values-led leadership. So thank you, Mary. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Delighted to be here. Thank you for your introduction, Hilary, and delighted to be here to celebrate the launch of this great book, Christian. Just a few thoughts on, how we might take it from the book into our daily practice. I just want to say, by way of background, that I'm one of six. Both my parents are teachers, and out of the six of us, four of us went into education. And so I just love anything that taps into the absolute heart and the spirit of why this is just such a brilliant profession. And you've absolutely done this, Christian, in this book. And so I'm just going to pull together a handful of threads on drawing out the moral purpose of this work. So, Christian, you're very kindly going to be moving the slides on, if that's okay. So I was asked to talk about moral purpose and values-led leadership. And I think that this is really important, but it's really important too that it is lived and framed in the sharpness of our daily practice working with young people. And so next one, thanks, Christian, is my view is that our pupils are always going to judge us, not in a mean-spirited way, but make out whether we're really, truly there for them or not. If we can show, thanks, Christian, next one, whether our values are lived or they're just laminated. Now, that's not me, that's Contender Charlie's quote, but I find it really helpful to frame the more conceptual stuff around leadership into, the grounded reality of our daily experiences as educators and the young people we work with. And what I've noticed in the 30-odd years since I've been in the business is that all human beings, but particularly those young people. They can tell if we're coming, you know, from here, from our heart, or whether we're just paying lip service to what we're doing. When they understand that we are coming from our deepest selves, we can go much further with them. And it means we don't need to be perfect. We don't need to be putting on a show. We can be our true, authentic selves. And it's this kind of crafting of our narrative that is so helpful in the book that you have just produced, Christian. And so I just wanted to put up 5 themes that really showed how it was possible, in my view, to bring those values to life. Thank you then. So the first one then I just wanted to touch on was the example of Georgina. And so I think was marvelous about this. This is a classic example of taking things from a sort of conceptual level, a theoretical level, into the grounded experience that actually makes a difference to one person, and then makes a difference to all the other people, Christian, that you will have encountered, both your peers, people who are senior to you over your career, but most importantly to young people you work with. And I just wonder how it would have been if you hadn't had Georgina or someone similar doing this video. So I'm just going to read it for a bit. You say, I've worked with some amazing people throughout my career, people who've mentored me, coached me, encouraged me, motivated me. But one person who stands out as a colleague is Georgina Watson, née Stevenson. She was a lead practitioner, second in department when I joined my first school as a cover supervisor, fresh out of university. She saw my potential I didn't see, and took me under her wing. She bought me a book called Teach Like Your Hair's on Fire by Rafe Esquith. Now, I just want to dwell on that for a moment, because we have all got the capacity to be a Georgina. We can all see the potential in someone else. And I think if we do see it, we've got an obligation to clock it, to mark it in that light touch way that can then lead to, this brilliant career you've had since. And I'm not saying it wouldn't have happened without Georgina, but I bet she made a whopping difference, or you wouldn't have mentioned her in the book. When I read that, I just thought, we all need a Georgina, and we also all need to be Georginas. So I hope she gets that message of how powerful that was. So that was thing number 1. That's an example of values being lived, not laminated. The second one I thought was really interesting that I drew out from the book was this notion of competence, and the idea that we don't need to be perfect, but we do have, because no one is, are they? And I don't think we should aspire for perfection, otherwise we just keel over and get depressed and stuff. But we do have an obligation, I think, as professionals, to be intentional about getting better. And so, Christian, you talk about when you're leading learning, is you yourself, we all ourselves need to continue to be a learner. And so we need to both hold ourselves to account for that, to continue learning, but also to offer opportunities as well to continue to develop competence. So thank you. The next one, please. I just wanted to draw out from the book was goals. Yes. And so the importance of setting really big, ambitious goals, but equally they don't overwhelm us, but that we talk about them both for ourselves as professionals, but also for our young people. Again, it's about grounding the theoretical in the practical. Then the next one, thank you, Christian. Yeah, you talk about a tipping point. And I think that there is, this was gorgeous. So when you talk about a really tricky class, we've all had them. And the way that you decided to talk to them, and you told them that you believed they would eventually become your favorite class to teach by the end of the academic year. And this is a really interesting place to come from, because you knew they were tricky. They would have known they were tricky, but somehow speaking to the future of who they could be, and also who you could be in taking them through that process, is incredibly powerful. And I think anyone reading this will find it so encouraging that, shifting behavior, shifting mindsets is absolutely possible. And given that you can't come into this profession and just find it's really easy. It's not. They're young people. They're designed to test us, particularly those teenage years. If they weren't testing authority, we'd never have societies moving on. So it's quite important that they do. On the other hand, we've also got to contain some of that. And I've always thought in that kind of energy that comes out, particularly with teenagers, that we can either resist it or we can ride it and shift it in the direction that you've articulated so well in the tipping point. And you say their behavior, oh, you didn't realize it, but I was shaping their expectations of themselves. Gorgeous. I planted a resilient, highly contagious idea in both their minds and my own. Their behavior slowly began to improve and the students began to make progress. And then that was recognized by an inspection team coming in. That wasn't why you did it. Obviously, you did it because it was the right thing to do, but it was just brilliant to see that was affirmed in that way of working with young people. And then the final one I just wanted to was this notion of gratitude. So there's a huge amount of research that says if we can cultivate an attitude of gratitude, the benefits both for ourselves, the people we work with, the family and close friends and anyone we interact with, it spills over into that in terms of appreciating what we have, becoming more resilient for the things that are inevitably going to challenge us. And I just love the fact that you put this in the book, having a gratitude walk. This is about sparking something in that section. Complete a quick gratitude walk through the school once a week, stopping to thank colleagues for something specific you've noticed them doing. It's my view that everyone craves to be recognized for the unique human being that they are. And I think articulating that in the book from someone in your position of seniority means it's going to be taken seriously by anyone reading the book. They should take it seriously in any case, but I think the fact that it's sitting within your book means that is going to travel. So I think just those handful of examples show that it is possible through these intentional acts of professional endeavor, making a point of wanting to get better, making a point of wanting to see the best in our young people, even when they're testing us, having high expectations and then wrapping it up in this lovely notion of gratitude is incredibly powerful. So, Christian, I was delighted to receive a copy of the book, delighted to pull up some examples. And at the end of the day, as I said, our pupils will judge us, not in a judgy way, but they'll be clocking as to whether we're really in it for them or whether we're just being performative. And I think you've captured that so beautifully. So I'm absolutely delighted to endorse it. Thank you so much for asking me to join you on this session.
Thank you so much, Mary. I really appreciate everything that you were sharing there, just because even when you talked about children testing us, I thought, yeah, I definitely can recognize that. No, really, really appreciate you taking the time to kind of share your thoughts. And for me, that is something that I hope people can see, is that actually we make the weather in schools, whether we're in the classroom or anywhere else in the school. We have the power to influence our young people. And I want to give a massive shout out for, I know you've just released a book about the ambitious years, Key Stage 3, and how we can kind of organize our thinking so that we're not constantly doing catch up in the latter part of young people's academic careers, but actually the whole foundation of their learning begins as soon as they arrive through the doors. And so I just want to give a big shout out to that, because I think that's something that's very close to my heart. And I think that teaching, like your heart is on fire, begins there. That's when you win the argument for why learning is important. That's where you develop those skills, and then it goes all the way through. So thank you, Mary, for your time, and thank you for your endorsement. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
That's great. Thank you very much, Mary. And some of those things really, really spoke to me. That idea of the heart and spirit of the profession, and showing our children and young people that as teachers we are there for them and that we care about what happens. And in the book, we definitely what resonated as well was the fact that it's all about belief. It's about that belief in human potential. And I know that in the book, Christian wrote, teachers must envisage the future possibilities for young people. It's really important, and we have to be intentional about that as well. So there were many things, and I've got some questions to ask the panel around moral purpose, and we'll see whether we get through the other C's as we move through. But yeah, Mary, thank you very much indeed for your contribution there. So we'd like also to welcome the panel. I know they're going to pop up on stage in a minute. Here they are. And I know that you, when you signed up, you will have seen the sort of bios of everyone. So rather than, perhaps when you speak, you might be able to say a quick hello and this is who I am. But again, I'm interested, it starts with belief. A teacher believing that they can make a difference to the young people and the children that are there in front of them. How is it then, how as a leader, because all of you are leaders within schools, can we think about using the messages in the book to kind of remove that deficit thinking, that idea of, oh, well, they're a difficult class, therefore, well, I just kind of get through. Do any of you have a response to that? What is it that teachers can do and change their mindset, if you like, around ensuring that they believe in the potential of every child and it's not just tokenistic? You need to kind of wave your hands at me and then I'll Akeem.
Hi guys, firstly I'd just like to say, Christine, thank you very much for the invite to be on the panel. And I feel the book has definitely come into my life at a very important time, as these are the conversations and the thought processes that I've definitely been going through. And for an individual who spent a lot of time teaching in the classroom but has recently come out of the classroom to lead personal development, I think it's important that one of the messages that I took from the book is understanding that as educators and as teachers, we are much more than just delivering lessons. It's about bringing passion, it's about bringing purpose, and it's about bringing humanity into everything we do. So as educators, I can hear myself echoing. As educators, I think it's important that we think about how can we go above and beyond for our young people. We want to be that champion for young people. We need to understand that every young person doesn't have that perfect home life. And what I've realized is when you go into the classroom and when you are delivering a class and when you have that strong bond with the class that you are teaching, you're able to see that actually young people develop in a better way than you, that sometimes it shocks you. So it's about building that relationship with your young people in your class, owning that class. Like often when I'm out and about, people say, Akeem, have you got any kids? And I'll say 1,600. And they look at me like, what do you mean? And the way that I see it is my students, I teach them like they are my own kids. I make sure that, for example, outside of the classroom, when we're on playground duty, I'm having conversations with them, asking them how their weekend has been, how's things, how's the family? And it's about young people just understanding that, yes, we may be here to do a job, but we are here because we care and that we want them to be able to be successful young people, and we will go above and beyond for them to be able to reach that. So I think it's just about us just making sure that we are being that champion for all the young people that we work with and support but also in addition to that, if we have new members or new colleagues that join our educational establishments, and if we know that, for example, we see more bits of where they are lacking, it's about how we also support our peers and our colleagues as well to understand the importance of being that champion for the young people that we are supporting. I can see Nadine's nodding her head and sort of like that.
I knew you were going to do that to me. I knew you were going to put me on the spot. Well, no, I'm just desperate to kind of jump onto it because I feel like you are literally saying everything that I'm thinking, but I'm also looking at it from the perspective of being a leader supporting your teachers as well. There's a lot in the book that touches on that self-efficacy. Albert Bandura has been speaking about this since the 70s. Actually that belief that you can do it makes it so much more likely that you can do it. And we're talking about, embedding this and empowering our children to believe that. Actually, if we don't believe it as educators, we're preparing, I think on page 32, it says something something about, you know, we're preparing children for a future that doesn't exist. How daunting is that as an educator, you know, to know that we're going to do that? So what are those kind of soft skills? What are those things we're going to put in place to kind of prepare those children for that future? There's a lot about, you know, literacy and writing, and that's great. I don't know if anybody still uses a pen and paper to write now, so I'm sure the children we're teaching probably won't either. But we're looking at that resilience, we're looking at that ability to kind of bounce back, to think outside the box. And actually, if we can't support our teachers to be able to do that, and if we can't, you know, encourage them to teach like their heart is on fire, how are these children going to learn like their hearts are on fire? So that was the kind of main takeaway I took from the book. And while I've got this opportunity, I'm just going to kind of jump in with something just from a bit of a side angle, that I think I'm probably the only person that has the privilege of being a recipient of being taught by Christian with his heart on fire. So when I'm reading the book and thinking about some of the things that he is kind of giving anecdotes about the Bish, I was the 14-year-old at the Bish, you know, thinking about some of the things that Christian used to do, things that really inspired me. And now at 33 years old, taking some of those things forward, I think that is just testament to everything that is in that book. So a huge thank you, Christian.
So yeah, great leader shapes the lives of teachers as well as obviously young people. Sorry, Miriam, was that you that wanted to come in?
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to make sure I didn't interrupt anyone because we were all alive at the same time. First and foremost, just say congratulations to Christian. What a superb book that you've done. And thank you so much for having me at your book launch as well. For me, reading Teach Like, you know, Your Heart is on Fire very much harks back to Christian's love letter to education and his passion. And is not only his passion, but how much the children he's taught and like yourself, Nadine, have taken away to then become educators yourself, which is just tremendous. The key thing for me is the rooting. The book was rooted in research, and ultimately what we want our students to really realise, and also the participants that, you know, who are engaging with the book, that it's not necessarily charisma that's going to teach like your heart is on fire. It's essentially those routines and pedagogical strategies that are so vital for our students. Now, Christian might be saying, but we both work in very, very challenging schools, challenging contexts, and it's so important for those students to have consistency in any of the routines and strategies that are implemented or developed, but leaders modelling it. And that was throughout the book as I was reading it, whichever one of the C's that was mentioned, character, capacity or culture, that the leaders were modelling that. And that was really critical in order to be doing that. And it really reminded me, I did teach first many, many years ago at the beginning of my teaching career. And that passion, that vision was everywhere. It was entrenched into our kind of teaching cohort. And when I was reading the book, it was so wonderful to really link back. And every kind of strategy a teacher was implementing was linking back to their moral purpose. And that really meant, you know, and I know it will mean so much to people that are reading the book as well. And to go back to kind of what Mary Myatt was referring to about Georgina, and then the impact it has on the other individuals, the ripple effects are just monumental. But finally, the thing that I kind of really want to touch on that really struck me in the book was the element on recruitment and retention, which is where we currently are nationally across the UK. And I appreciate there's other people outside of the UK here as well, but it's huge. And the big part of this role and our roles as leaders and educators is to be able to make teaching to how valuable it is, how important it is to society, the impact you have as educators, and to be able to kind of mention that, go through that and talk through, you know, how can you be able to embed passion whilst also being academically rigorous and being unapologetic in that for the students who deserve it the most. So that was really prominent to me, really. Bex, do you want to add anything? Because I'm aware that you've joined us there as well.
Well, firstly, a huge congratulations to Christian. I think when I was reading the book, what was really lovely was, I suppose, it felt like I was like the conversations we've had, you know, the interactions we've had, that was really coming through. And, you know, what I enjoyed was actually hearing more about some of your own experiences. And I think a couple of bits that really resonated with me. The first were those bags. Am I saying that right? Is that how you? Yeah. So those big, hairy, audacious goals, and thinking about that as, I guess, you know, constantly striving in those leadership positions to keep pushing the envelope and keep going, because this is a vocation. We get into teaching because we want to make a difference, and sometimes because it can be challenging, people can lose their way on that. So I think when I was reading it, I was really like it was really like refreshing, and my thoughts around what, you know, what's really important, and kind of thinking about the why are we doing it. I really actually like that bit about growth and fixed mindset as well. And I love the inclusion of the bits about the school reports that I thought was so, it was so poignant to me, because I thought, well, you're absolutely right. If you have students, or if you have adults in schools who believe in those young people, you know, the distance they can go. And I really like that story about the year 8 group that you were finding really challenging. And actually, rather than having those, you know, those kind of conversations in the staff room, oh, they're so difficult, they're so challenging, oh, they're great, like they're going to be great. And all of a sudden, just that change of perspective from someone who has that influence as well, it all of a sudden changes the landscape. And I'm a sociology teacher by nature, so we look at labeling, self-fulfilling prophecy, and I think it can have a huge impact. There's all that evidence out there that it can, and of course it works in the opposite way as well. So I just thought, particularly for, well, certainly for teachers coming into the profession, what a brilliant book to be able to read and understand so many of the processes that are important within schools. But actually, you know, for leaders and teachers who've actually been teaching education for a long time, I think it's super important that they read this. And I think it's super important that they reflect on, why did you get into it? Because people don't get into this job because of the holidays. People don't get into this job, okay, for the pay. They get into it because they want to make a difference to young people's lives. And your book absolutely touched on the heart of all of that.
Thank you. Wow. I mean, honestly, I can feel the passion oozing through the screen there. And actually, you know, we support the DfE's recruitment and retention strategy. And our very own Professor Chingu has, over the number of years, been producing a longitudinal study into the impact of UCL's programme on early career teachers and MPQ participants, thinking particularly about retention, about recruitment, and about workload. And actually, you know, I can't really even give it in a nutshell, but one message from that is that actually teachers are being retained as a result of these policy initiatives, but only when it's supported by strong school leadership, only when school leadership supports through creating the right organisational culture, enabling those teachers to thrive and stay. And I love that idea. Again, it was coming back to the year 8 class. I'm sure you remember those in your mind all the time, but you know, how so you felt as a teacher that you were a leader because you had some agency in how you were approaching those children, how you were getting to know them. So how, you know, if there are teachers or aspiring teachers on the call here, how can teachers be responsible, you know, have their own sphere of influence, if you like, and really draw on their own leadership? What are the things that they might be able to do in the same way that Christian did?
Yeah, can I jump in there, Hilary? Thank you so much. And I've thought a lot about this ahead of you know, the book launch today, about retention and going back to Christian's book about it. And it's cemented throughout, but the golden thread being, you know, professional development is retention. Really excellent professional development from either the trust you work for or the organisation or the school that you're a part of. And that looks like really effective line management. That looks like opportunities to be able to do MPQs. That looks like, you know, programmes that could be specific to that school. It's important that that staff member, no matter what stage of the career, is coached in some way. That is good retention because they feel really valued, but also getting that regular feedback, which is really vital at ITT. Feeling seen is retention. It's remembering those key bits. I know that staff member has a child. I know what the child's name is. I know what they did at the weekend. I'm going to ask them about that on Monday morning. I don't have much time to, because I'm super busy as a leader, but I know that I'm going to walk in the corridor. How was your weekend? afternoon, sir or miss? Can I just, how did it get on with Johnny at the weekend, etc. Those things are really important. And what's really great is that Christian cemented that, Peter Parker at the beginning of the origin story, but then Gladiator as the book progressed. But ultimately, what we want is, what we're really lucky on this call, we've got loads of amazing leaders, loads of amazing experience there, but it's our leadership of others that is really critical. So we can have all of these strategies, we can have all this knowledge about pedagogy and curriculum and assessment, and all of those things are really important within the school, timetabling, which is vital. But how do we cement that, develop others, and lead those staff members really well? That's really key, and that comes through phases. You're not going to do it all at once. You're not going to overwhelm your team. This is also thinking about an academic year, whatever your leadership strategies are for the year, or your priorities, should I say. But making sure those individuals that you are line managing, whether it's from ITT, middle leaders, seasoned leaders within the school, that leadership is really critical, and you've really thought about it from a succession point of view, but also a modelling point of view. I want staff members to do duty really well, so I'm going to model it really well. I want staff to teach really well, so I'm going to model that really well and coach them to be better. I want my senior leadership to be able to do that. And particularly, I'm really privileged to be a vice principal, and I've worked with, in a number of challenging communities. And a huge part of my job is serving others, but also supporting my staff to say, okay, this is what we do when we get it right. This is what happens when things, and not always, things go well. So we've got to check in there as well, which is so important. And that kind of golden thread about that I felt while reading Christian's book was the leadership of others and how we do that as effectively as possible. Nadine, you've been nodding loads. Do you want to add anything?
I'm gonna have to just keep myself still. I just everything you're saying, I'm just thinking we're probably at a kind of similar stage in our career, all of us, just kind of looking at us, and I'm thinking about when you said there about that professional development and your MPQs and what have you. And I think with the best of intentions, a lot of organisations provide those, but then kind of forget the space that has to come with that. Okay, you're on an MPQ, so have I ensured that you have got a mentor, and have I ensured that you and that mentor, coming back to timetabling, have got your time out at a similar time? Or have I made sure that there is space to be able to support you with that? And then on top of that, is there that psychological kind of space and safety for you? Because a lot of aspiring leaders, they want to do everything at once, and they learn very quickly you can't do everything at once. And actually know how to sit with that and what that looks like, and actually it being okay to fail. There's a whole section about that in the book with of course it wouldn't be Christian without a football or sport analogy in there, but it's okay if you fail 300 times and you succeed 301 times. That's absolutely fine. So understanding that it is okay to have that sort of safe space for people to try things and perhaps not succeed. And I think we as kind of leaders need to also accept that we also want to empower our team to be able to say that to us as well. Actually, Nadine, I know you spoke about this, but it's not really working for me, or it's just a little bit too much. Can I just take a step back? And I think ensuring that teachers can have that agency over their kind of own time, their own space. There's this notion of we're a family here. No. A leadership team that's got that kind of high emotional intelligence makes space for you to go to your actual family. So I think that's something that really needs to kind of feed onto that's what you were saying there. But 100% agree with you, Miriam.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that piece about psychological safety is so important, and I think I've had the absolute pleasure of working in a leadership team in a school right now that does exactly that. And what you see from that is kind of staff being able to thrive in their own way. I think there needs to also be an appreciation that staff can decide how they want their career to look, what success looks like for them, and they should be given an opportunity in which they can thrive in the way they want to. I think understanding individual members of staff, but like you guys have both said, making space as well for those members of staff to be able to still have a life, and appreciating that builds trust. So I think also giving staff autonomy as much as possible. I think we've probably all seen where where autonomy is taken away, people feel that they aren't trusted to do a really, really good job. And actually, when they are given that autonomy, they can thrive. And that means that those young people can thrive as well. And I think that that's really, really important. And I myself have had the pleasure of seeing that, delivered. And I can see how staff then thrive in those situations. And I think it's so important for staff to feel valued in that way, but also when things aren't working, for those conversations to be able to happen, and for staff to know, like you were saying, Miriam, that basically it's okay to fail, but it's also okay to be honest about that and have that really open and honest communication in schools. I think it's really important.
Yeah, just to tag on to what you said there, Bets, in terms of staff thriving, I think what helps massively with that is it's about your school culture as well. And once there's that positive school culture across the board, it shouldn't be the case of, for example, in a school, it shouldn't be the case of you see the leadership team to a certain extent, and then you see the support staff team. Everyone should be valued at the same level. Everyone should be supported at the same level. Everyone should feel appreciated within the environment. And what we see is once there's that positive school culture and school environment, our young people, they pick up on energy. So once there's that positive energy within the classrooms or on the corridors, at break time, at lunchtime, what you see is the young people are able to thrive as much as us as the adults. Us as adults, we want to be able to ensure that we're creating that environment where our colleagues are thriving, but we want our young people to thrive with us, so we're thriving together as a school family, as you said before, Nadine.
Can I? I'm going to ask a sort of spin-off question to that, and that is, leaders create and they shape the organisational culture that enables teachers to thrive and stay. And we all understand that, and we understand sort of what that means and what that looks like. But is it only leaders that should shape that organisational culture? What is it that the teachers themselves should bring to the table there to ensure that culture is exactly that they're getting the best out of what the school has to offer? So, what qualities, if you like, should a teacher possess to enable them to thrive in school? Because it isn't just a leader's responsibility to guide them through. The teachers have to bring something as well. What is that? What are the magic ingredients there?
I definitely think they need to have botheredness. They have to care. There has to be an attention to detail. They have to have a desire to want to grow. They have to have a desire to help their young people grow. And I think if you don't have a sense that actually I want to help young people grow, I want to myself grow, that is like the core ingredient. That ability to kind of develop and increase your capacity is something that's absolutely essential to you being able to lead and model that for other young people as well, or colleagues. You need to have, there's an element that you care. And I think that's why I think I said in the book that it's not just business, it's personal. There is an element that this is connected to my vocation. It's connected to my life's purpose. This is a way that I get to manifest a part of my life. And I think that if you don't have that passion, and it's not just about passion and kind of it's here today, gone tomorrow, but there is like an overarching moral imperative that this is the way that I can help make the world a better place, is through my profession. And I think if you don't have that, I think it's really hard to cut it in teaching, would be my view.
Is that one of those unteachable things, isn't it, that comes quite naturally when you become a teacher? It almost becomes a part of your identity because you are so consumed, you do care so much about it. So yeah, I totally agree. That's something that you kind of can't really teach. If you don't have that, it will be very tricky for you to survive it or stay in it for the right reasons.
Yeah, I think, Hilary, your initial question, sorry, were you going to say something? Did I just cut you off?
Carry on.
Your initial question about what teachers can do, I think leaders provide the mechanics within the school. So, it talked about psychological safety, talk about kind of how the timetable is running, teacher individually is not making the timetable for the whole school, the safeguarding processes, but then in that classroom, how that curriculum is then implemented and delivered. And then those interactions, in the corridors, in the first thing, a number of teachers, I imagine, will be tutors, but also teaching assistants, how they're supporting students as well. Those work all in tandem together, and that desire and passion that Christian mentioned there. I think there's an important distinction within that, is that not every teacher is going to embed that in the same way. not everyone is openly defined as charismatic. Not, you know, some people aren't extroverted, others are introverted. So what that sort of looks like when they're interacting with the student is that, yes, they're having really positive and meaningful you know, conversations and interactions, and just like they're embedding the curriculum, but the way they implement that is going to be in their own very unique way. And I think that's important to say. It's not saying that this is a kind of codified model for every single teacher to be, you know, in a particular way, but it is you know, all teachers engaging with their students and wanting them to do as well as they possibly can.
Okay,
I guess sorry, Hilary.
I'm sorry, it was just, no, Bex, go for it.
Well, I was just going to say, I guess the point about that as well is that all of the students are individual too. So you're absolutely right that, you know, when we talk about teachers as leaders in those classrooms, there will be students who, you know, need to also have those relationships with the more introverted type teachers just as much as the extrovert. And I think those, basically, for me, the foundation of that culture is all about relationships, and I think that's what comes through in the book. So ultimately, those relationships, you know, we've got teachers who are different and individual, and as long as they feel safe to be able to be like that and express themselves in that way, that means that they can build better relationships with all of those individual students too. And I think that was what came across to me also, Christian, in the book. It was about seeing students as individuals, and want, you know, dreaming that life for them, dreaming that kind of having those goals for them that haven't even existed yet, and actually seeing them on that individual level. And kind of, I think that's what builds those relationships. But you're right, Miriam, like you know, as long as teachers can thrive and be those individuals, I think it provides then stronger relationships for all the different types of students that we have too.
So yeah, thank you. I'm aware of times where honestly I could listen to you all forever, and your voices are far more important than mine at the moment. I think and when we think about the title of the book, Teach Like Your Heart, you know, Teach Like Your Heart's on Fire, actually we're thinking that some teachers on fire is kind of a slowly burning ember, and that's still okay, and others are kind of bouncy big flames, and that's also okay, as long as they are authentically being themselves, and they can have different pedagogies modeled to them, and, you know, ways of doing everything within school, but they have to bring their whole selves to their classrooms and to their roles in order to be successful, because children, young people know when people aren't being authentic, and that shows really clearly. Look, Bex, Akim, Miriam, Nadine, thank you so much for your insights, for your anecdotes, for bringing that. You made my job extremely easy, may I say. So look, thank you so much for being here. And now, you know, we've got a few questions perhaps to ask Christian to see whether you know, sort of what his take on certain things are as well. But yeah, thank you for being here, celebrating the launch of this wonderful book.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, Christian, you're now in the hot seat.
I know. I mean,
Now,
what a great conversation, and you can see why those colleagues are so helpful in terms of thinking through some of these ideas.
Yeah, and I think you know, their passion and purpose was what really came out through those conversations as well. That's why it kind of made my job, yeah, really easy. And I think maybe this isn't a question that I think, you know, I'm going to ask you actually, but can everyone teach like their heart's on fire? Is it something that's inherent? Is it something that you can learn how to do?
I think it goes back to what you were just saying just now about authenticity, and that we're not saying that there is a codified model that this is what a great teacher looks like, but it's more about being able to bring oneself to the job, the task at hand, which is that if it is a relationship, if it's based on relationship, then that means that how I show up is going to be authentic to the person that I am. And so if I am someone who is you know, really like, so we're subject specialists, but if there's a particular interest that I have, that should come through in the way that I work with young people. You know, for me, I'm a huge I love like popular culture, and you can probably tell from the book, but like making references. I use a lot of analogies. That's just the way I see the world. And so in my teaching, that will come through. I'm constantly trying to create a bridge for young people to see how they can get through to the other part of their learning. And I think that if that it doesn't come through, that it doesn't pass the kind of authenticity test. And I think if relationship is so key and it starts with trust, then I should show up as my authentic self in the classroom and in the way that I relate to young people. And of course that's being professional, that's ensuring that you are conducting yourself in a way that is a role model for young people. But I think that at the heart of it is that you show up as yourself, and you recognize what it is to be a learner. And that's why it's important to be a lifelong learner, because you recognize what that messy, difficult, complex experience of learning is like, and you've never stopped knowing what that's like. And so therefore you are in a good position to help lead young people forward. And that teaching like your heart's on fire is about that moral imperative, that you recognize that what I do now, the cumulative effect of that is that it can change someone's life. And I think if you recognize that, that's how you maintain that fire.
No, that's a great answer. And I think excuse me. So Mary spoke about moral purpose, and if we think about what we could describe as uncompromising moral purpose, and the fact that we all understand as educators that have been in the business for for a long time, that values-led leadership, having belief, all of those things that have been discussed are really important. But we work within schools that are perhaps sometimes imperfect, can we say? How so, for example, some teachers, some leaders may find themselves working in schools where they are finding it difficult, where drawing on their own moral purpose and their own values is difficult, because that isn't necessarily something that's exuded by leaders. Is there a message, or is it something that they can do about that? How can they?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I talk about in the book is about greedy organizations. And I think sometimes schools can become greedy organizations where they simply extract every aspect of kind of labor and utility out of the people that work in that environment. And what you do need is a leadership culture that actually nurtures teachers and kind of sustainably sources that kind of the thing that is driving it is that more imperative. And so you want to make sure you're nurturing it in such a way that teachers continue wanting to, that the best schools I've worked with, the best colleagues I've worked with, exist in a culture where people are willing to make that discretionary effort, not because it's being extracted by force, but because they willingly want to do so. And it's something that can, the culture is so important. I think Peter Drucker talked about culture eats strategy for breakfast. The idea that you absolutely, you can say whatever you want. Mary said it earlier on about laminated not lived, that idea that you can say all of these things, you can espouse all of these values, but if your culture doesn't reward that and doesn't recognize that and doesn't elicit that from the people working in it, it's not going to happen. And so I think for someone who's working in a scenario like that, it goes back to that idea of moral imperative, that for those young people in your classroom, you can only control what you can control. So in the classroom, that is where you have influence over the young people. In the school that I reference in the book, it was a school that had lots of challenges at different levels, but the class in front of me, I wanted to make sure that I did my very best by them to try and ensure that I helped them on to the next stage. And that's why it's such a proud moment for me to have Nadine on the call, like to see what she's gone on to do in her career and know that I had some sort of influence in that. And I think that that's what sometimes people can lose in those moments when they're working in a tricky situation, is that what you're doing is an investment into the future. And so it doesn't mean that might not be sustainable. It might not be that you can continue to keep on doing that. But I think in that moment there and then, the challenges that you face are not the fault of the young people. They are the things that you have to navigate to be able to help those young people move forward, regardless of what the challenges are. But that's not to say that you shouldn't take stock or whether this is something that can be sustained. And I think if we have great schools, then people don't have to worry about that. They don't have to worry about whether their labor is being extracted or whether they can freely give their discretionary effort, which is what makes all great schools work. Is you have teachers and adults and educators and support staff who willingly want to do the thing that they're doing because they recognize the impact it has.
Yeah, and I guess I've seen many teachers who have struggled in particular schools with particular culture, who have gone on to thrive in other organisations, and I think a key message is don't leave the profession if you're struggling. There are ways of having agency over what you do within your sphere of influence, your children in your classroom. But schools are led very differently, and actually there's a school out there for everybody. And so I think that's important. And I had a really last little tiny question, because I know you want to do kind of some sort of giveaway, which is all very exciting for those behind the screen. And that is, we hear all the time these comments or about, oh, you were born to be a teacher, Christian, you were born to be a teacher because of all that. But I truly believe that nobody is born to be a teacher, that you learn to be a great teacher, and it takes time, and you have to push yourself to learn, and you have to make mistakes, and you have to bounce rather than break, and all of those things. What would you have to say about that?
I completely agree. I think that you are born with certain dispositions and giftedness and talents and things that need to be then honed to become a great teacher. But I think that ultimately there is a responsibility for the school, the wider education system, to ensure that we develop our staff to have long-lasting careers. And that means ensuring that we do have that psychological safety, ensuring that we do have cultures that support colleagues and reward and recognize them for the great work that they do. I think that it's a really important part of being a teacher, that when you have like open evenings, a parent comes to your school and says, will you look after my baby, will you take care of them and make sure that they, for the next 5 or 7 years, they go on to be successful. Well, I feel that teachers do the same thing when they come to a school. They're saying, will you help nurture my career, will you help me to develop, will you help to retain me? This is something I love. I've marshaled all of my kind of my skills and my talents and my beliefs, and I've brought them. Will you be able to utilize this in a way that helps me to grow, so I've got a great place to work, but ultimately that I can help these young people in my charge to grow so that they have a great place to learn? And I think that that's a really important part of educational leadership. It's a privilege. It's really a privilege, and it's a weighty one, but it is a privilege because we do shape the future. Like, I've been using that hashtag because we literally build lives. We are able to influence the future and shape it to be the way that we want it to be, and our young people carry the messages that we want to communicate in the future. So I think that for any colleague who is maybe feeling tired at the end of an academic year, or is difficult, I hope this book would be a balm to your mind and soul and make you remember the reason why you got into the profession in the first place.
Yeah, really. I mean, such powerful words. And, you describe teachers in the book as rare and unique and valuable. I couldn't agree more. And, to what you've described, the way you've described it, is that teachers inhabit the profession. They don't just live outside it and come in and launch themselves in every day. It's kind of a way of life. It's a way of being. It is that sort of vocation. And there are many things about teaching, being a leader within sometimes quite challenging circumstances that are difficult, but there are always moments of joy. That no day is ever the same, even with a similar timetable. Yeah. To be in a position where you can ignite and then reignite those hearts and minds, whether you are a slow burning ember type of fire, or your heart is fully blazing. Your teachers and leaders make a phenomenal difference, and it really is a privilege to have been in schools and now to be able to provide that sort of professional support to teachers and leaders across the world. So Christian, now we have a couple of minutes. Over to you.
Well, what I'm going to do is I think at the end of this call, I'm going to look at all of our attendees, and there are going to be 3 lucky winners who I'm going to send this book to, because for me, the big thing is about communicating the ideas of this message, because I think it's important. I think it makes a difference. I think there are hopefully things that people can take that they can practically employ in their classrooms, and that it will help shape the way that their young people in their charge experience it. So I will be picking 3 lucky winners at random, and I will be sending out a copy of the book, and I want them to be able to enjoy the book, and that's why I wrote it. I wanted it to be like mercifully short so that people can read it. It's a great read for maybe being on the beach when you finally get to your summer. But I do want to make sure that I get those in the hands of those people, and I'll post something on social media later on to say who those lucky winners are.
Very exciting. Well, fingers crossed, everyone behind the screen there, that you're one of the lucky ones. Christian, it's been a real pleasure to be here to support you with the launch of this wonderful book, and obviously wish you really well. Thank you to everyone for being here, for listening, for being part of the story, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Hilary. Thank you to all my guests, and thank you for joining. Speak to you soon. Take care.